Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by Castalia at Sfumato. You'll find them on 2nd Avenue at West Alexandrine in Detroit's Midtown. With matching scents and knowledgeable bartenders to guide you, I know firsthand Castalia is a great experience. Try one of their drink pairings or feel free to go off the menu with an adventure for your senses. Their menu both tells you how boozy a drink is, and there is a full non-alcoholic lineup taking care to give you a top-notch sensory experience. Whether it's the intimate indoor bar with less than 20 seats on the garden level or on the patio outside enjoying the best Detroit has to offer, Castalia is a great spot for a night out, a drink after dinner, or a date. They're open to all Wednesdays through Saturdays from 5 to 11 p.m. with unique experiences for small groups available anytime with a reservation. You can learn more at CastaliaCocktails.com. That's CastaliaCocktails.com. Make sure to support the businesses that support us and stop on by. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is a beautiful Friday, March 15th, 2024. I am Jer Stays. It is the day before the actual, 2 days before the actual St. Patrick's Day. And so I'm glad to welcome none other than Mr. Devin O'Reilly. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Jerry? Yeah, tomorrow would actually be your Saturday if when you're listening, it would actually be St. Practice Day, but I do not observe that. I do not observe that holiday. I get enough practice throughout the year.
Did you observe it before?
No, I never did because I always got enough practice throughout the year. There was no day before practice needed. If anything, my Saturdays before St. Patrick's Day, I would usually abstain from alcohol altogether to prepare myself for the holiday.
So we're going to talk about two big stories today. We're going to talk about the idea that I-75 might be capped in downtown Detroit, covered over. We'll get into it more in a second. We're also going to talk a little bit about District Detroit and some of the prognostications that we made that I think have come true in a roundabout way. But first, I want to start with something fun. It's a little bit of a Michigan level news, but I just got this in my inbox. Here's the deal, Devin. What do you think about a laundromat that serves alcohol?
Interesting. I didn't expect you to go there. Well,
this is apparently happening in Grand Rapids. First ever booze while cleaning your clothes.
Well, I will endorse anything that adds booze to mundane tasks. First of all, I've probably been inside of a laundromat like 4 times in my life, and half of those were on like a vacation somewhere. So I just have so little laundromat experience. I think it's a good idea because it sounds like a laundromat. You're doing a lot of downtime. Like, what do people normally do? Is my question at a laundromat while their clothes are being washed.
For me, it would always be like answer emails, play a game. Sometimes I would like if it's a laundromat nearby, like when the laundry machine is busted, I just like walk around the block because there was a laundromat near the North End house. Especially sometimes I go to laundromats if you need a bigger machine. For certain things like rugs or a industrial kind of level machine, we need to do a lot. I know that there are some listeners and friends of the show that go to the laundromat quite often because, say, their apartment building, it may have a laundry, but like that laundry is kind of small and when you could just take it all and go to it. I think the laundromat provides like a special service, especially if you don't have like the hugest laundry machine or you just want to knock stuff out. Because if you have a good laundry machine, industrial level 1, you can actually knock out a lot of clothes at once, which is different than say at home. I end up just having to kill time, and I feel like it's an interesting option depending on where it's located.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. So like, are we thinking there's like a legit bar at the laundromat? So it's like a bar laundromat, or just like kind of serve yourself, there's booze available at it?
I imagine because of liquor control that you'd have to have like somebody serving.
I would agree. So then you're basically becoming a bar-drommat.
A bar-drommat or
a laundry
suds,
bar.
Or if it's beer focused, suds and suds.
I mean, just call the place Suds. I love that.
I'm very curious to see what people think, if that's something they'd like to see in Metro Detroit. dailydetroit at gmail.com. It definitely piques my interest because, it seems like every business nowadays is looking to do like 2 or 3 hustles in one.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? And maybe if we had one in Detroit, I would just go have a beer and watch people do laundry. I don't know.
Or just bring some with you. You know what?
Yeah, get some done, yeah.
The Daily Detroit Laundromat Party.
Yeah, that sounds like a thing. We're going to cast any judgment just yet.
Would love to hear from people on it. 313-789-3211. Let's get into a couple of stories I think are important. First off, this week came the news that Olympia Development and the related companies, the Illich family, Stephen Ross, are changing up what they are doing with the District Detroit. Turns out they're going to have some trouble getting financing for the office tower they were going to build, a 525,000 square foot office and retail that was going to be right next to Comerica Park. This is an area that actually they didn't own the land for with Wayne County. Like Wayne County would not get them the land. They couldn't come to an agreement with it as well as financing for this. So they're saying they're going to go ahead and do the residential first. I think the market forced them into something that I think you and I have been saying for a long time, Devin O'Reilly, that
yeah. I think I'd like to amend their statement. I think what they mean to say is we're doing the residential period, but they're saying they're going to do residential first. There's no first, there's no second. There's just the residential. They're never going to do an office there because it'll never make sense.
Really? So you think it's a never, not even like so you think it's not going to be like 10 years out or like residential?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure when we'll get to the point where we need to build new Class A office space. I think there's more coming online. Aren't we already at a point where we have more than we need? So I think doubling down on residential, doing the hotel, it's more realistic. You'll start seeing the payoff more sooner. I love getting more people downtown. So just overall, I love the idea of putting residential first anyway. The residential, do the hotel, do those developments because I think those are more realistic. Building new office towers, unless they're literally moving, Olympia people into those, I don't see where the demand is.
Or if it's a specific build, like, hey, I'm this company and I'm building it for us, right? And more of like and honestly, the Michigan Central project started before the pandemic, so that was already in process. But there is like programmed ideas for what's happening there, and a good portion of Michigan Central is going to be a hotel. Let's not forget that.
Once you get, slice the pie around, there's not a ton of office space at Michigan Central. It's mostly, like you said, entertainment, not residential, but hotel concepts, things like that.
I just think the clock is ticking and all this stuff because I remember Stephen Ross at the announcement for the University of Michigan Innovation Center talking about how this was like the longest project that it took for him to get done. I imagine progress needs to start happening one way or another, or we might see another stall out. This is just my theorization here, but I don't like this project to me doesn't happen without Stephen Ross.
Yeah, we need to get some shovels in the ground and not just the shovels for pictures, but some real shovels, breaking up some cement, and that's when I'll really truly kind of believe that the project is underway. I don't think Stephen wants to walk away from a project. From a reputation perspective, from a dollar perspective, as we've talked about before, he has one of the premier real estate development firms in the world. So I think that, there may be some frustration on his end of why is this taking so long, but he's got the deep enough pockets. He can make this move. And I think once they can focus on the residential side of things, I think we will see some movement.
A couple of thoughts. One, I am disappointed to not see those parking lots get developed between Comerica Park and kind of the Fox Theater. I think you could wrap in residential if you need to do some additional parking. There's just so much potential to make a real proper baseball sports neighborhood around there that I think is just being left on the table. It makes me like, I'll go to Wrigley or something. It just makes me sad that there isn't that. And I wonder if this is just not like, should I just get rid of my hopes that the county is just not going to move that land anyway? So it just is what it is. And I just need to resign myself to that. And I think the second thing I'd like to see is some of the buildings like the Women's Club and some others that are owned, but already close to there. They need to activate some of the stuff that's already there, as well as building new stuff. I think those could be some easy wins to activate stuff that already exists.
Yeah, those are much more attainable goals. There's some really nice buildings there, some really nice bones that they can invest some additional dollars in. And not as many dollars as building a new building. So I'm totally for it. Like, so I'm very I'm very skeptical of any new office buildings getting built, but I am optimistic and in thinking that they will get some movement on residential and rehabbing. And we need more people in that area, Jerry. I think what you're alluding to is really important, because the problem is it's kind of a chicken and an egg where, you and I walk that area a lot. I mean, I do. And during the day, during a weekday, if there's not a game or something, that area is just really dead. I mean, you might walk a couple blocks and not see anyone else on the sidewalk during times of the day. So like what you need there is people living in that area. And there are some lofts, I think like the Iodent lofts, and some of the buildings have some apartments, but by and large, there are very few people living in that area. And if more people were living there, you would just have that consistent activity to merit coffee shops and restaurants that were open, all day.
And I will add, obviously, and we've said this before, there's more neighborhoods to Detroit, but the reality is the perception of what Detroit is to a lot of people in the region and otherwise, honestly, is that area around the stadiums, because that is the area that they see the most. That is the calling, like whether you like it or not, whether you want to accept it, whether you agree with it or love it. I know that I don't. I know there's a lot more to the city. Our calling card as a city is that stadium district.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people will see. And, they may not see other areas. And I know people might say, well, who cares about people who are coming in from outside? But, think about from the tax-based perspective, they are spending money here. And that does help the city overall. If you get a bunch of people from all over coming to a certain area and spending their money, that is helpful for everyone involved.
Now, this next topic, I think is going to get people really fired up one way or another. Now, we've talked about I-75 and whatever might happen with that project. There's, I think, some things going back to the drawing board with that, but this is really near it. But I think an important thing to talk about, a little over $4 million was allocated from the federal government between the city of Detroit and the Downtown Detroit Partnership to study capping part of I-75. Now, I've been to other cities that have done this and done it really well, where you take the freeway and instead of removing it like the I-375 project, you basically put a top on it and then you make the top a park or some activated space to make it so that you don't have a big old loud noisy ditch in the middle of your downtown. I've been to a couple of places that have done this really well. One spot in Columbus, they actually put restaurants on there. It's fabulous. You don't even realize there's a freeway underneath you. It's great, honestly, from an urban connection point of view, in my opinion. But to see this money come from the feds, this is part of a whole thing that Biden has put out, the Biden administration, about reconnecting communities across the United States. And so this is $4 million, a little over $4 million, to start the research phase, not to build it. What are our initial thoughts? Some of the renderings of District Detroit actually show a freeway cap over some blocks, especially west of Woodward. I mean, you could research and look at all kinds of ideas to connect Brush Park, areas of downtown, and create a truly amazing public space there, in my opinion. What are some of your thoughts?
I love the idea of this, but this sounds like, just some urbanist pie in the sky dream more so than anything you will actually see put in place. The scale of what would need to be done. Ask anyone. I've been to Boston several times. Ask anyone who's spent time there. They had something with their big dig that took I think it took decades almost.
But that was moving and removing a freeway. This is just putting a top on it.
Okay, what are we talking about here? Putting a top on it? This isn't a tooth you put a crown on. You don't just put a cap on a freeway. What are we talking about here? A cap? What is a cap made of? Tons of concrete, cement, dirt? What does a cap on a freeway even look like?
Well, to me, if you've driven through I-696, a local example, there's those walkways for the in Oak Park that you have some sections that are parks on top of the freeway. You could do something where it's basically a giant bridge that you make kind of green and interesting space. They've done some of this in Chicago. There's parts of Chicago, the rail yards, that were actually capped over, and it made a huge impact near that area near Millennium Park.
Additional bridges is one thing, but from what we're talking about here, from what I've seen, we're literally talking about capping the freeway from Cass to Brush all across there. That's a tremendous undertaking. Talking about billions of dollars in infrastructure.
I don't think it'll be billions. I think it'd be in the hundreds, but I don't think it'd be. But that's part of the point of getting this research money, to figure out connections, to figure out how feasible this is, because it's in plans, it's in vision documents multiple times for city stuff that we have seen this, right? You and I have both seen this, and different versions are it's just So what's the scale of this? If it's one block, it's extremely doable because it's basically like, oh, this is just like a giant bridge, right? If we're doing one block, or are we doing 3 blocks? Are we doing half a mile? What are we doing here? And I think that's part of this research and development phase of trying to figure out, okay, what is feasible and how much it would cost.
Yeah, I think that overall, like I said, I like this idea. I don't want to kind of put off that I don't like the idea. I just think it's really, really a pipe dream, and I wouldn't get too excited about it. What I would say is I hope that in the end, the planning, the studying of this gets people to a point where I want to do something, but I think maybe this is a less is more type of scenario, Jer, where we do address this issue and we build something to kind of cap or bridge those communities, but the scale of what's being discussed, like a full-on putting parks and businesses over the top of these freeways, like what do we just talked about the Illich stuff, like this isn't gonna I'll be old and gray by the time something like that actually happens. So I think if we say we're gonna do that, we're not actually gonna do it. So let's lower the expectations and say we're going to address this somehow, put some additional bridges, connectors, maybe not as wide of an area. Like, let's do something. I'm for that, but let's not pretend like we're gonna do the whole kit and caboodle.
Another thought we could have in my mind is, what if we did something to make our existing bridges as well? And I'm for, by the way, I'm for a bigger idea. I'm actually in a completely different space than you are on this, that I think this is like a 10-year kind of 5-10-year thing if we decide to actually get the money together because of the way that it's set up. But I think that it could be something where we learn that we need to do something better with some of those bridges. Like, those bridges are awful to walk across, okay? I've walked across them. They're terrible. Like, it's just this big expanse of freeway that doesn't belong in the heart of a city.
Well, what happened to where were we told, or where did we see these renderings where that bridge was going to be kind of like activated and turned into a place where there was like businesses and vendors? Like, I remember that discussion that you and I had about the current existing bridge infrastructure between LCA and the other, Foxtown. What happened to that? I mean, I thought we were going to do something like that already.
Well, I think that was in the vision documents, but I don't think that was fully researched out, right? Because when you start to mess with freeways, you need to research out there's so much regulation to it, right? Environmental impact, community listening, like studies, all that kind of stuff to say, okay, like, wouldn't the idea of capping some of that area, say near Brush Park, really improve the property values of all those townhomes that are right next to a freeway that, like, you listen to like, I assume that capping would help with the freeway noise. Like, there's various positives that are possible, but I would love to talk to a planning expert. I think we'll try to find somebody on the show. And if somebody's listening and want to talk about it, dailydetroit@gmail.com. I'm all ears. I want to explore the idea of more caps. I know from experience it can really add a lot of value. What I don't want us to do is cap it and then don't do anything with it, right? Like, I want us, if we're going to do it, we should lean all the way in and say, we're going to make this an amazing space, as opposed to right now where it's like so much of the stuff abutting that freeway are just parking garages for the stadiums, right? Like, we could do so much more.
I love what it would do. It would certainly connect you. We just talked about in the last segment about, creating more of a neighborhood feel. And that would certainly make Brush Park and basically the Comerica footprint feel like one neighborhood. But again, don't start planning for that just yet, because it'll be quite a long time before anything like that would ever be able to come to fruition.
Well, and there's going to be a lot of chance for community voice. I think that's a big part of this money, right? To see, to do the planning stage. And I hope that they look at modern numbers, because I think that was one of the problems with I-75. Some of the problems, frankly, with the I-94 widening is that there have been a lot of changes in that immediate area that, when you come to it as an outsider, you don't think about it. You just go, oh, the numbers were here 10 years ago, da-da-da-da-da. But, like, Midtown's a different place than 10 years ago, 100%, And I think that some of those changes, too, around LCA and Woodward and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I do make it more. I do like making the area more walkable. Adding more green space is all great. I think the more complicated you get, though, that's when you get to a point where people are just going to walk away from a project, or it's just not going to happen. And we talk about funding it. Where's the funding going to come from for a project like this? You would assume it would be all kind of public, state funds, perhaps some
federal for sure. Like, because I think that's a big part of this is that the Biden administration is pushing this across the country for, hey, we're going to put some federal dollars behind this.
Right. Absolutely. So if it comes from there, federal government tends to move slow as it is. So I like the idea. I hope we talk about it more, but I don't expect us doing any updates on this for quite a while.
Well, as always, feedback is welcome. 313-789-3211 or dailydetroit@gmail.com. Devin O'Reilly from west of Woodward. It's always good to talk to you.
I always enjoy talking to you, Jer. Hope people enjoy it. Hope people enjoy their St. Patrick's Day, however you choose to celebrate.
100%. And from east of Woodward, I am Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Don't forget that we are supported by our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit, and leave 5 stars on your favorite podcast app. Remember that you are somebody. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.